Hello and welcome to this edition of An Inside Look. Today I have what I think is a fascinating guest. In fact, that's all I have, isn't it? Fascinating guest. But this lady is truly remarkable and has a wonderful story to tell. And we want to talk to her and get a little bit more information. In fact, we want to get a lot more information about her story that goes back approximately 19 years. The lady that I will be speaking to is Kitty Chadboure. Actually, Earlene Chadboure. And Earlene is the author of a book entitled Parenting Myself, and as a subtitle, Recovery from a Traumatic Brain Injury. I'm going to hold it up, and I'm sure the guys can come in on it. Again, if we get a little bit of glare on the cover, I apologize for that, but we'll move it around a little bit so you can get a feel for what it looks like. The book was printed last year, according to Kitty, and it's the story of basically herself going through what none of us would want to go through. A remarkable story of a person doing precisely what the title implies, parenting herself, recovering from traumatic brain injury. So, without any more talking on my part, let me introduce my guest, Kitty Chadboure. Kitty, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I hope it's going to be as much a pleasure when we're done as it was coming in, and I think it will be. It's a wonderful story, an amazing story. The book is available. We'll talk more about that as we go along. But, Kitty, just a little bit of background about yourself. I've always almost prefaced it a little bit by talking about an accident that occurred some 19 years ago. Prior to that, who is Kitty Chadboure?
I grew up in Scarborough.
Okay.
I'm a graduate of Scarborough High School. I went on to the University of Southern Maine and then married.
Okay.
Lived for 20 years with my first husband in Sanford, Maine, which was his locale. Had 2 children, was divorced after 17 years of marriage, moved to Saco with my younger son because my older son was in college then. I went back and I finished my degree. My background is in history and in art and in line and design, and I have taught in the school system. Oddly enough, I was the primary substitute teacher for disabled children.
That is interesting.
In Stanford. And when I was in high school, I worked at Baxter's School for the Deaf, teaching Sunday school. So, all of that. And now I work part-time at volunteering at Dyer Library and in the archives, and I primarily write historical pieces that are part of a larger whole, or poetry. I've been included in several poetry books and the solid professorial type history pieces. So this book is a departure because it's very personal.
Absolutely, but you have a background, as you were saying, history was your major.
Right.
And so that required a great deal of writing. It's the writing piece that I'm interested in at this point, because we'll get into the details of what happened and so forth, but after it's all done, she decides to write the book. So there's got to be some kind of a literary background, or literary connection, or expertise that goes with it, and you're obviously giving it to me. Your interest in poetry, where does that come from, and how far back does that go?
It probably it probably goes back for even in high school.
Sure.
Because it was something that we were encouraged to do. Mrs. Larry encouraged us to do it. Marguerite Larry and Edna Ferguson. And then I was journaling, and I have journaled a good portion of my life.
Interesting.
The reason I would do it would be to make sense of my life. And sometimes that would come out in a free verse type of thing. So until I met Roy Fairfield,
whom we've all met at one point or another.
Oh, and he is absolutely delightful.
Isn't he, though?
I was what I would have called a closet poet.
Yeah.
Because writing poetry requires you to be very succinct.
Yes.
It requires you to focus on the experience. And writing good poetry is very much like writing children's stories because they do not tolerate superfluous words.
Exactly. They can't deal with superfluous words. You have to be right on point at all times.
Absolutely.
And so I was going to say, free verse, you answered my question. Free verse, blank verse is what you were interested in.
It's a balance, in the history piece. It has to be, you have to explain in detail why things are the way they are, and give sense to the world the people in the world who want to take everything apart and dissect it and then put it all back together again. And then the poetry is like a nice balance.
Isn't it, though?
And then artwork always factored in.
Sure.
So.
And the artwork, where does that come from? And how far back does that go? Probably even before high school, I would say.
Oh, well, yeah.
As a little kid,
As
right?
As a little kid, I always had very encouraging teachers, and they were just absolutely thrilling. Yeah. And there were a lot of teachers in my family. My maiden name is Alquist, and there are lots of teachers in my family. So it was, It
was all part of the process, all that growing up process, surrounded
by
My
way of thinking
education.
was that was the way it should be because that was the way that was normal for me.
Absolutely. Okay. We have a fairly good feeling of who this young lady is, and then an accident happens in 91?
90.
In 1990.
August 14th.
Correct.
1990 was a lovely, lovely summer day.
Mm-hmm.
I decided I would go for a short bike ride to my cousin's. I was living in Saco at the time. Had remarried like less than 18 months earlier. Adam was finishing up high school at Sanford High. He lived with me in Saco and traveled to Sanford. My older son Guy was in college. I had 4 stepdaughters, and I was pulling life together after a painful piece, with when a prior marriage dissolves. It's just very painful.
Devastating.
Yeah. And so I headed out on a bicycle ride to my cousin's, and I assured